make sure I can do this properly. Okay, here we go. So Canada Pension Plan Disability, the funding, like the pool of money comes from the same Canada Pension Plan retirement contributions that you make. So as such, when you turn 65, if you do qualify for Canada Pension Plan Disability, when you turn 65, your Canada Pension Plan Disability will automatically convert to a regular retirement pension, which will be less at 65. But then at that point, you're going to qualify for other benefits such as old age security and potentially benefits such as guaranteed income supplement, which is based on income and marital status. So there are other benefits past the age of 65 once Canada Pension Plan Disability decreases. So to qualify for Canada Pension Plan Disability, you need to have sufficient contributions to Canada Pension Plan. So on the first $3,500 that you make a year, you don't pay into Canada Pension Plan. After that $3,500 that you make, you start contributing. So anything over $3,500, you're going to start contributing to Canada Pension Plan, and that counts as a contribution. So typically you need to have contributed to Canada Pension Plan in 4 of the last 6 years, or for the last 25 years, including 3 of the last 6 years prior to becoming disabled. Now, I wouldn't automatically screen yourself out. Please don't do that. If you listen to those numbers and you say, well, I simply don't have those contributions, we encourage everybody to do the application anyway because there may be other factors in determining whether or not you're eligible. So please don't screen yourselves out. Those factors would be the late applicant provision. So if you've waited a while since the onset of your disability to do the application, in other words, you might not have those contributions in the last few years, what they'll consider you, they might consider you as a late applicant, and they'll look at your contributions prior to the onset of your disability. There's also such thing as the child rearing dropout provision. So if you took time out of the workforce to take care of your children, or if you have lower contributions during that time to take care of your children between the age of 0 and 7 within Canada, they may be able to drop those years out of the eligibility, out of the assessment as well. There's also a credit splitting provision. So if you didn't work or you were working less than a spouse who you are no longer with, an ex-spouse, they may be able to split the credits that were accumulated during that relationship and apply that towards your eligibility. And then there's always international agreements. So if you've lived or worked in a country other than Canada, with which Canada has an international agreement, those contributions to their pension plan may also make you eligible for Canada Pension Plan Disability. So for those reasons, please, please, please don't screen yourselves out automatically and not do the application. Now you also have to demonstrate that you have a severe and prolonged disability. So Canada Pension Plan, I will say, is difficult to qualify for, which is why you do want to provide on the application as much information pertaining to your disability and how it affects your ability to work and how it affects your daily life on your application. So by severe, they mean that you're unable to work in any job on a regular basis. And by prolonged, they mean at least 12 months and of indefinite duration or likely to result in death. And you must apply in writing. So the application is quite lengthy. There are many, many different steps here. So first, you've got your application for disability benefit. That's going to ask you questions about your work history. If you previously, what your current job is, what your previous, if you've ever done any other types of jobs in the last little bit of time. It's going to ask you if you've been on employment insurance lately. There's going to be a disability questionnaire. That's going to go into more detail about how difficult you find it to do certain tasks during the day. For example, if you have difficulty reaching, if you have difficulty with many different just daily routine tasks. That's where you want to go into a lot of detail. Then there's also the medical report that they require. That's going to be filled out by your physician or whatever doctor is most familiar with your disability. Now, you'd think that, okay, most of that information will be on the medical report. You leave it up to your doctor. But what this questionnaire for disability benefit gives us is how this disability affects you specifically. And you're going to know that more than your doctor is. Your doctor might know how this disability typically affects people, but he or she may not know how it affects your day-to-day life. Then these two here, consent for Service Canada and consent for the physician to obtain or submit personal information, you also want to submit those. Then we've got the child rearing provision for Canada Pension Plan. So here's what you're going to tell us about your children if you did take time out of the workforce or you had a reduction in earnings during that time. You're going to let us know about your kids. And then there's the application for benefits for under age of 18 children of the disabled contributor. So if you have any kids under 18, you want to give us your information about them. And for each child under the age of 18, you could collect an additional about $242 monthly for them. If you have children over the age of 18, but they're under the age of 25 and they're still going to school full-time, and full-time is based on whatever the criteria is for that institution, that educational institution, they're still going to school full-time, they could also receive themselves that $242. They're over the age of 18 and under 25. All right, so we move on to the adjudication process. So first what they're going to do is they're going to look to see if you have made sufficient contribution. So they'll take all those provisions, the child rearing provision, the late applicant provision, credit splitting, all of that to determine whether or not you have enough contribution. If you don't, they're going to send you a letter. Then step 2, if it's been determined that you have a severe and prolonged illness, they're going to send it, well, first of all, they're going to send it to medical adjudicator to determine if you have that severe or prolonged illness. Okay, so for late applicant files, the medical adjudicator needs to determine if the applicant was medically eligible at the date in the past, continually until the present and into the future. So if you don't have those contributions in the near past, in order to be a late applicant, the disability that stopped you from working before needs to be continuous and still affecting you and affecting you into the future. For regular files, the medical adjudicator is not requesting information in the past. However, he or she may still request additional medical information to clarify if a medical condition meets the criterion of severe and prolonged. So every file is looked at individually, so the decision is not based on a specific disease or condition alone. So they do take into account so many different factors. So it's really important to put all that information on file when you do your application. Right. So it's important to note that not the whole physician's file is required, but everything that pertains to the disability is required. So examples of medical information relevant to the applicant's ability to work, such as laboratory X-ray results, consultant report, investigative report, hospital notes, etc. So other examples of factors that could be considered besides the medical diagnosis would be the nature and the severity of the medical condition, the impact of the medical condition and treatment on the client's capacity to work, the prognosis, and this was interesting that I found, personal characteristics such as age, education, and work history. So while age doesn't necessarily play a factor, sometimes that does determine whether or not somebody may or may not be employable in the future. While employers are not supposed to discriminate, that may still play a factor in whether that person would be employable in the future. So age in some cases may play a factor. Okay, so the decision to grant is determined, if it is determined that the applicant has a severe and prolonged disability, the payments begin the 4th month after the date of onset of the disability as determined by Service Canada. So that 4 months, if we go back to employment insurance sickness benefits, that's about the duration of a sickness benefits claim as well. So it's recommended that if you are thinking about applying for Canada Pension Plan Disability, that you do so at the same time as you apply for employment insurance sickness benefits. In most cases, employment insurance sickness benefits is going to get you a decision a lot faster and certainly get you in pay with retroactive payments while they're waiting for, or while you are waiting for a Canada Pension Plan Disability decision. So most claims are supposed to be processed within that 120-day time frame. In the case of somebody who is critically at risk of passing away, they do have a shortened application. It's a 1-page application that gets looked at quickly and much faster than that 4-month period. So if it's determined that the applicant doesn't meet the criterion of severe and prolonged, then they will deny your application. And that's determined based on CPP legislation. And then you will be informed on how to request a reconsideration in the letter. So that's why it's really important at first to when you do the application, to provide as much information as possible. A lot of times when people are denied Canada Pension Plan disability, it's because they didn't provide enough information. So in your request for reconsideration, if you have to make one, it's very important to give us even more information as to how this disability affects your ability to work. Go into as much detail as you can. So despite having a severe and prolonged disability, many Canada Pension Plan disability clients are able to attempt to return to work. And for clients who try to return to work, CPP Disability offers a range of work incentives. So the return to work incentives includes the ability to volunteer or retrain. You can also, in fact, even go to school if you'd like. It used to be that you were not able to go to school, but you are able to do so in this case. Canada Pension Plan Disability just asks you to inform them if you do achieve a degree in something, a diploma in something, just to let them know. Now, allowable earnings, you are able to also work while you're receiving Canada Pension Plan Disability, but the amounts fluctuate. The most recent figure I have is about $5,300 in a year before that might affect your Canada Pension Plan Disability. So it's not to say that if you earn over that you will be disentitled to Canada Pension Plan Disability. You just want to inform Canada Pension Plan ahead of time that you believe that this is going to happen, that you're going to earn over that amount, and then they'll work with you to figure out if possibly you are able to return to work in some capacity or not. So it's not an automatic disentitlement to benefits if you go over that. Just keep that in mind. Okay, so other types of vocational rehabilitation. We've got programs that could include employment counseling or guidance, planning for your return to work. It's just something to keep in mind that you are able, if you can, to return to work, you are able to do so. And there are ways that will get you, for example, a 3-month paid work trial to test your work capacity, where they're still paying you Canada Pension Plan Disability. It's just important to keep in mind, just to keep in constant contact with Canada Pension Plan Disability if any of that happens. So if you do go back to work, there is a period of time where they may automatically reinstate your benefit if it turns out that you're not able to continue working with that job. And in some cases, there's a fast-track reapplication to get you back onto CPP disability, if it's the same disability, to get you back into pay if that work does not work out for you. So it's a simpler and faster process than filing a new application. And it's available for up to 5 years after your benefit has stopped. Okay. And then, of course, you must apply within 1 year of stopping that work. So if you return to work and then eventually you're not able to work anymore, you have 1 year to reapply. And it has to do, the fast track reapplication has to do with a recurring disability. So if it's a brand new disability, then you're doing a brand new application for Canada Pension Plan Disability. Okay, and this slide, the following slide here, doesn't have the greatest phone number. I wish I could write down what the phone number is for both programs. But if you do call 1-800-O-Canada here, please note that this O is an O. It's not a 0 from the O Canada. All right.